Welcome to S.P.A.C.E 2012 Webcomics panel. We have a panel full of webcomic creators, award winners, whatnot. What we can do to start is let's just go down the line, everyone give an introduction, and discuss a little bit about your project and what brought you to the web. I want to start down on that end with Eric Adams, creator of Lackluster World, who's making the transition into webcomics.
Yeah, I am the least qualified because I don't actually make webcomic yet. But I do make a comic called Lackluster World, which I just completed, and I'm starting the process of working on 2 other comics, which are all going to be webcomics. I guess that's something I'll be talking about.
I'm Frank Sedkovic. I run a webcomic called punchup.net, and it is about a guy who gets beat up for a living. It was originally supposed to be a physical issue, like graphic novel, but it made more sense at the time, instead of waiting for years for it to be completed, to put it up on the web, 1 page at a time as you go, and get some sort of following. So far it's worked out pretty well.
I'm Ryan Tackett. I draw double-clicked comics. I'll let
Justin Hines, I write double-click comics. We started doing double-click comics about 3 years ago. We decided to we wanted to go ahead and we wanted to do something that involved getting a humorous comic project out there, but we didn't want to have to commit to doing a written comic at that time because we didn't have any real idea on how to start with that. But we knew the basic ideas of the internet work and wanted to go ahead and produce a web comic, and sort of everything just sort of spiraled out from there.
My name is Kevin S.P.A.C.E. I guess I pretty much came up with webcomics, and they were always around, and it just made sense. So when a few years ago I decided I wanted to make my own webcomic, which was called Spoilers, and I just sort of approached it like, how would I make a comic on the web? And so it kind of lent itself to an interesting form that was kind of, it can't really be printed, and it's kind of too long to really even be read on the internet very well. I guess you need to wait for browser speeds to pick up. But I finished that about 2 years ago, and I'm in the process of starting a new webcomic called Project Ballad.
My name is Doug Hufford. I'm the co-creator of Yuri the Awakening. We started it about 1.5 years ago. I think we came up with the story first and then decided how did we want to distribute it. And at the time it seems like webcomics is really taking off, and it seemed like the perfect blend of technology and entertainment, and we decided to go that route to get it to as many people as possible.
My name is Todd Beisel. I'm co-creator and artist of Yuri with Doug. I think what I really like about the format of webcomics is I'm impatient. If I had to wait until I had 22, 23, 24 pages done before distributing it, I probably would lose interest, never touch it again. But I think having a weekly deadline and seeing people click on it, it solves my immediate satisfaction. That's why I do webcomics.
My name is Sarah Lindo. I run lindo.com, and I use webcomics sort of in conjunction with actual print comics to just reach a wider audience of people. Some people like to read comics on the web. Some people like to read them in print. I like to give everybody what they like. So.
All right, well, we've got a few pre-printed questions here. After this is complete, we'll take questions from all of you. Feel free to ask anything that's been on your mind. Question that often gets asked, we've kind of addressed it, is why did you come to webcomics? Why pick that over absolutely everything else? So I'm going to start down there and go down the line again.
Sure. I've done print comics for about 8 years now, and I've wanted to get into webcomics for a while, but for the sake of consistency and what my project I was working on, I wanted to complete that. But it's been a difficult psychological barrier to overcome from going from print to web, because from the model of you make something, you sell it, and that's how you earn your profit off of making your comics. But the world has changed in that people expect entertainment to be free now. We have things like Napster to thank, or just not even things that are necessarily free, but things that provide instant gratification, like iTunes. And I decided I needed to work with that and stop fighting it. And in doing so, I'm going to start creating webcomics that I will release online. They're free entertainment. Anybody can read them for free. But I'll still collect these things and sell them after the fact. And I'll have merchandise available that's connected to it. And some people who are not familiar with webcomics question the model of why would you give away your comic for free? Who's going to buy it afterwards? I mean, more people would, because I think people who read it, they don't buy it again to read it. They buy it as a trophy to celebrate the fact that they have read it. And it's almost an honor to have that on the shelf. On top of that, there's also there's opportunities for paid digital content, which is becoming very popular in the past 12 months. So for me, the transition from print to web was a necessary one. That's just the trend of the market, and I'm trying to if I want to do this professionally, I gotta give people what they want. And that's how I see it.
Much like Eric, we were doing physical books for a while, mini comics. We did a small print run of physical punch-up stuff like the first act, more or less to try and pitch to professional publishing houses, your Image, your Dark Horse, and that, as it turns out, is extremely difficult to break into because they, not that Punch-Up isn't a good comic, but if you're going to take a risk on printing a larger graphic novel, they need to have the knowledge that people are going to buy it when it's out. And we decided, yeah, it would be great to have a physical hardcover, but more or less we want people to read it, which is why we decided to ultimately go to the web where we can get people to read it as we're making it. You know, we can maybe get some audience influence on the story, on the art, which is really cool because you wouldn't get that making a regular book. You know, nobody reads it until it's done. Whereas what we're doing now, we can have some sort of impact from other people on the way the book looks and on the way it works. And to touch on what Eric was saying as far as like why people will buy it when they've already read it for free, and I think it is sort of like a trophy, but I also think that a lot of people, I myself, you know, do a lot of webcomics, and I think that knowing that these people are doing it for free, even though I've read it, it's kind of like a nice thing to do to like give back for the free entertainment, you know, to purchase a collection of somebody's comic or their merchandising and stuff. That makes sense to me, at least.
You're saying that people want to support the artist, knowing that they're providing for free.
Yeah, I think that always is one reason for people to buy the collection after they've already read it for free.
I started pursuing webcomics. Basically, it's just a way to get my comics out there. I had done a couple mini comics, and for all the work in making the comics, I wasn't able to really get a lot of people outside of my area to even read them. So it's just hard, you know, to distribute them. So I figured webcomics is like a cheaper way to get more people to see it. I can just point you towards the URL to read the comic instead of having to wait to make the book, hand out the book, and then hope people still hang on to it when they get home with it. They can just log in and see it based on any link, and people can share it with each other. And I feel like it's just a better way to get a bigger distribution quickly, which is, you know, basically my goal with that.
In many ways, one of my favorite things about doing webcomics is being that I'm a writer. I appreciate, you know, feedback on what I do, and doing something on the web like that gives you instantaneous ability to get feedback. So right away, if you're doing something people don't like, or people don't agree with, or people have a different view than you can hear that, and it allows you to go ahead and think of other ways of doing things. Sometimes, especially when you're writing things, you might have you only have your own mindset, and it's almost like trying to hammer in the circle lock into the square hole, trying to get a point across sometimes. Other people might provide other ways to look at that same idea. And it also lets you know if something's just flat out not working. you're trying to, you have a recurring joke you're doing that annoys everybody, and you'll find out real quick, don't keep doing that. As opposed to if you're doing a 40-page comic book or a 30-page comic book, and you do that recurring joke for the entire thing, and by the end people are just sick of it and they're throwing it in the trash. So I think it's really nice having that ability to get the instantaneous feedback so you can continue to grow and evolve.
Kind of like I was saying before, I've always liked webcomics, so it's kind of like anybody who loves comics, like especially like print, a lot of these guys were saying that they wanted to, you know, make a comic book and have like a publisher print it. It's kind of the same thing. I always liked webcomics, so that idea was like, oh, I want to make a webcomic, what would that be like? And so that was an interesting experience, and I've not so great, or I don't have as much of a passion for like the promotional side and like getting the word out and like doing all that stuff. So I guess that wasn't really a concern while I was doing spoilers. It was kind of more about, I'm doing this webcomic and I'm doing it the way I want, and you know, some people will probably read it. And I guess I was just thinking that one of the advantages with something that I'm funding for pretty cheap on the internet is, as long as I can afford like hosting space, it can stay in print for however long I want. So it kind of has longer legs than maybe something I printed out and, you know, didn't really go anywhere and just kind of like pulp it or something. But recently with the newer webcomic, I'm working with another person who's writing it, Project Ballad, and we're approaching it more as not just intrinsically a webcomic. We're thinking we might want to do it digital distribution, or like have like print collections eventually. So kind of a more like multi-vehicle approach to it, and even that kind of changed the way I was thinking about doing it. So I think now I'm starting to think more about sort of strategizing how to like get it out, whereas before it wasn't as much of a concern.
Well, I think the main reason we went with webcomics to begin with was it keeps costs down and easy for distribution. But it's funny how this industry morphs. Like, we quickly discovered, like they were saying down there, people want trophies, so we had to start making printed variations of our books. So how we do it is every 20 pages, we then go ahead and print up a book to help support the website. Yeah, I'll defer to you, Tom.
All right. I think also it kind of serves as a try it before you buy it type of model. You can pull it up, read whatever is on the website. If you like it and you see the creators at a show, or you see the book at your local shop, you already know what you're getting, and it's an easy way to be able to catch up without the expense. And if you like it, you can contribute, you know, about the creators, and you have your trophy. Also, I think that one of the other big differences is you're reaching a worldwide audience. We have, it surprises us all the time, we get a lot of hits in Germany, in Sweden, and if we waited until we had a full book done, we printed it, we would have Ohio covered, we would have Kentucky, we would have Indiana, but we wouldn't be in Germany, we wouldn't be in Sweden, we wouldn't be in California. So you're reaching a much larger audience, and that's nice when you know that you have people in different languages that are reading your book. That's kind of a cool feeling. The expense issue, it's, you basically buy your domain name, you buy your hosting, you pay your subscription dues, you put it up there, and that's it. You can have your work out there for minimal cost. So there's a lot of reasons why we went with webcomics.
For me, it was just sort of reaching a wider audience. I knew if I just sold at conventions, it's just you're reaching just those people just at that time. Online, you can reach people, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People can stumble upon you. People, like you were saying, from Germany and Sweden and Russia and all kinds of places can see your work. People who would never get a chance to see it because you're only selling it at S.P.A.C.E. or at Mocha or whatever. And it's a cheap way basically to promote yourself and to tell people, hey, go check out my work online, give them a card, give them your website. It's a great way to promote your work.
So it definitely is. One thing we get asked all the time at conventions is, how do you actually make money? What is the business model for a webcomic? Well, in talking to lots of creators, it varies greatly. Everyone does completely different things in order to make money. I'm sure everyone here would say it's a labor of love and they don't care if they make money, but you gotta pay for the website and support it somehow. So now I guess we'll discuss how we actually make money off of this thing. We'll go ahead and switch it up and start with Sarah this time.
I work a day job, I'll be honest about that. But most of the money for this sort of enterprise comes in from occasional freelance work and, generated from the website, and selling books, selling actual physical books or digital copies. So that's pretty much that.
Well, there are many different ways you can make money. Like Eric suggested about having premium content on and sell as subscriptions. You can sell that way. You can host ad space on your site. There are many, many different places you can go to create an ad account. Project Wonderful is what we use, and with Project Wonderful you create your account, you plug in some code into the page, and people bid on it. You set your price, minimal price, you can go free. And you have potential advertisers bidding against each other. So occasionally, and usually it happens mostly when you upload a new page or you have an update, people see, the potential advertisers will see your hits, and they'll know what day you get more hits, and they'll bid on your ad sales. So we use that. That gives us the money to put back into advertising. So we advertise on other websites. And it's a good way to be able to bring more readers in. The more readers you have coming in, the more your ad rate's going to go up. We make money off of selling books, commissions.
Yeah, I mean, Project Wonderful is really wonderful. I mean, they've done a great job with us over the past year. Well, besides just straight advertising, we also support the book with merchandising, but obviously we can only do that in shows from time to time. So we kind of lean on web advertising to cover it.
The trick with advertising though on your site is you have to pretty much make the commitment in the beginning or at the end. It's a mistake because your readers, if they're pulling up your site and they see no ads, and then immediately ads pop up, they may abandon your story because they feel like you're selling out.
Either go all in or not at all.
Yeah.
I guess just basically I don't make any money off the comic. For Project Ballad, we do have a little Project Wonderful ad block, and I don't know. I guess my brother bought an ad for probably like a penny of Zeus going like this.
You do have flash now.
Yeah, I saw that. But, so I don't know, I guess as this current project goes forward, we'll, I guess, explore different avenues, but, yeah.
It seems like when you start out, the main point is just get your product out there. Focus on the quality of the product. And then after that, you can start thinking about money.
Yeah, I guess as the artist, I can kind of, working with somebody else, I can be like, my number one priority is like making this, as, I'm putting my all into getting this like great. And then Michael as the writer, he's writing, but a lot of the times he's already scripted, so he has a little bit more time to like handle the PR end of it, and I'm happy to unload that end of it to him. So.
With us, I right there with you. We don't really make a lot from doing just the website of things. We do have some merchandise that we do. We have a printed copy of our first years of comics. We have a couple of comic books that we've done as well, mini comics. And we get some from the merchandising and from selling different products at these conventions. We've sold like mouse pads and stuff like that as well. But ultimately, most of it comes funding from just straight from us. We do use Project Wonderful, which has been really good. We originally started with Google AdSense, which is nonsense.
Yeah.
Don't ever do. You won't.
It was a bad move.
It's a good commercial.
Yeah.
So, horrible idea.
It's pointless.
Yeah, and same thing with advertising through AdSense. It won't help you. But overall, Project Wonderful has been really good to us, and we're hoping for to see more out of that as the year goes on. But most of it just comes from our own pocket, and that's just to start out with. You're just kind of a lot of times you're stuck doing that, and the whole thing is if you're willing to stick through it, eventually it'll start turning the corner. As long as you're able to provide a product people are interested in.
Yeah, the one thing I like about our printed books, we do them through Kablam Printing. It's a really good printer, but they also not only let us print our books, they also provide an online store where our comic is also hosted and people can order it print on demand. So if they order it from there, they'll print a copy and send it to them, and we don't have to take on the inventory. They handle that stuff for us. And the other thing is, as far as merchandising, we also have a Zazzle store where we have things like these t-shirts and stuff like that that are available on our website. And we don't actually have to carry boxes of them to conventions. We can just tell people that's where they can get those when we're selling them other books in person. So it's kind of nice not having to fork over a lot of cash since we don't make a ton back. It's kind of, it just supports itself that way.
I feel really good about myself right now because I don't make much money off of the webcomic either. Anything that we sell is usually from a convention. We do books and now like little plush doll things. But we're in the process of trying to open an online store. It'll probably be like Etsy or Big Cartel thing, rather than using Kablam's Indie Planet, which our book is on there, but we've never had much success with Indie Planet. It's a weird site. Unless you have a direct link, it's kind of hard to browse to. So that's, I think, where we've gotten lost. But yeah, like it doesn't cost us a lot to make the webcomic, so I don't feel bad that we're not making much money off of it in return. We just want the story to get read. If we can make money later, that'd be cool, but if not, as long as you read it, we're happy.
My comic, Blackluster World, was it was a labor of love, but I definitely do care about making money off of it. I think everybody does to some extent. Not to say that that's what your main goal is, but if only that it's a very easily identifiable, quantifiable way to see how your book is performing and how people like it. And I've had tremendous success at conventions. Again, I don't have a webcomic right now. I've managed to sell books digitally, and I've managed to sell books, physically online with shipping. But I think that my strength with it has been marketing. And I think whether webcomics or print comics, you really have to have a strong marketing sense if you really want to be able to get all the people reading your book. We come up with creative ways to interest them, to draw them in. Just understanding basic branding, what images are going to make an impact on them in front, what words are going to make an impact on them. And then you take that information, you just you throw shit up against the wall and see what sticks. And once you do that enough, you kind of learn what works and what doesn't. Hopefully you do that without spending too much money. So that, and I think that's actually the best way to make money is to spend as little as possible. To be very thrifty and resourceful, how do you get the most bang for the buck that you're spending? Doing a big print ad in a magazine is probably the worst way you can spend your money. But if you experiment with doing some Facebook ads, you're probably getting a lot of return on that. So I think in the end, I'm trying to keep this kind of short because there's a lot of us to talk, but I think the most important things with web or print comics are to really focus on the marketing of it and how you're promoting to people, and keep your costs down. Worry more about keeping costs down than worrying about bringing cash in.
I think Eric struck into a very interesting vein there. Marketing is crucial in this business. I did not realize that before I got into it. I thought we were just gonna make a book and that's that. But, I mean, you have to get it out to people or no one's ever gonna hear of it. There's so many tools for marketing, like Facebook, Twitter, buying ads, whatever you wanna do. So let's go ahead and talk about how we market our books. Let's go ahead and start with you, Sarah.
Okay, I use Facebook to reach existing people that know me and people that they know. Basically, I don't do as much marketing as I should, and that's something that's sort of a goal to move towards. A lot of what I do is word of mouth, Facebook, and shows, conventions, and a little bit of sending work to reviewers. There's a lot of online reviewers that you can send your work to them or send them a link to your work, and they're basically giving you free publicity if they give you a decent review. So that's been a big, I've definitely sold books that way to people who see a review and go, oh, I'm interested in that. So that's worked really well, actually.
Facebook and Twitter are wonderful. When we started ours, we went full board with Facebook. We created a Facebook page for Yuri the Comic, our characters in a band. So we made a Facebook page for the band and we tried to promote it as a real band. And we did get some fans that were asking, well, where are you going to be performing? So that's going to be interesting. I was trying to take what they did with The Dark Knight when they did their viral marketing. And they promoted the political campaign like it was a real campaign. We tried to take what they had done, the success they had, and do that with Yuri. And we created a Yuri page that we tried to promote as the real character. And it just became too difficult to manage. There's a lot of Facebook pages to maintain. And so now we just have the Yuri the Comic. We use that a lot. And Doug here, he uses Twitter. We reach a lot of people. You can guilt your friends and family into liking it, and then their friends and family will see it. So that's a good way to attract some people. But they're very instrumental. There's a lot of webcomic directory sites, like Top Webcomics, for example. You can put your site on there, and they'll guide some clicks to your site. Reviews, that's a wonderful way, because if somebody reads a glowing review of your book, they're going to want to check it out. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're still learning as we go. Everything's trial and error. Like with reviews, I mean, there are so many web reviewers out there. Half the time we don't know who to take seriously and who not to. I'll send my book to somebody and never hear from them again. So, I mean, it's really hit or miss. I mean, we want good reviews, but there's so many out there trying to do that industry. But yeah, Todd pretty much covered it. Facebook and Twitter are our two keys. We've kind of split up our duties since there's two of us working on one book. He handles most of actually all the Facebooking, however you want to word that. And I do a lot of the Twitter stuff. I'm on there constantly being active, constantly trying to retweet and promote the book.
Trading links is a wonderful way too. Being a webcomic creator, you meet other webcomic creators, and you end up just swapping links. Swapping links with other sites, like UVN. They link to our site, we link to theirs. So it's build good contacts with other creators and other websites.
Yeah, I guess that kind of segues well into me. Like I was kind of alluding to earlier, I don't really market my comics that much per se. Like I make cards, and I did like a ad for spoilers for a little while. Then I think I had to move on to things. But mostly I kind of like work on getting my face out there. Like I go to shows all the time, and I like strike up relationships with other cartoonists, and I'm just making sure I'm always making something new is important, that I always have something going on. And for like the past year, it's kind of slowed up as I've moved on to this new project, but I was writing on a comics criticism blog called The Comics Cube, and that was actually really more successful than I thought it would. Like I didn't go in with the intent to like market myself, but that sort of managed to catch a lot of people's attention, and it sort of put me on a lot of radars that I've been able to continue to be into. And then as this new project started out, I have a lot more people with sort of wider broadcasting range who are, willing to promote this new project I'm working on. So, that's really nice, and I'm so grateful that they think it's, worth spreading around. But so that's pretty much like where I've been focusing. I think I look at my sort of cartooning career as a whole as what I want to promote, and and that's focused on whatever I'm working on at the time. But as long as I can sort of maintain myself as somebody worth paying attention to, I think that can only help my work.
We do use both Facebook and Twitter, as were being alluded to earlier. We're not the most active on our Facebook. We have personal Facebooks and Twitters that we'll use to promote the comic through there.
Twitter's great.
Twitter's a great. I think that social networking has really changed a lot of the way everything works, because it allows you to get your name into places that you wouldn't previously expect to get your name out to. Good examples, if you know any people that are well known in the webcomics industry, or people who are associated with the internet in large ways, you ask them sometimes, hey, could you retweet this and get my name out there a little bit, and they'll send it to their followers, and next thing you know, you bring in new people that way. It's one of the big advantages of Twitter versus Facebook is that you have access to those people on a more direct level than you'd ever had before. Other than that, as far as marketing goes, it pretty much just comes down to we show up at conventions and say, hey, you'll hire stuff, but besides that, we really don't have a whole lot of other things that we get an opportunity to do. We do some work with Project Wonderful. We're looking into adding more where we're advertising on other people's sites as well, and that'll hopefully bring some more things. The reviews, though, I've never even thought of. That's actually a really good idea as well.
Yeah, I'm always surprised whenever I tweet something and then I look at like the hits that we got, like where they come from. So I need to definitely be better about updating the Twitter, because we get a lot of hits just based on getting links out there and getting retweets. So that's what I think is one of the better ways. I don't think our Facebook is taken off as well.
No.
You get a few fans here and there, but just something about the way tweets go viral. They seem to get further to more people.
Like everybody who's come before me, I'm a big fan of free advertising with the social networks. We have a Punch Up fan page. There's I send links out on Twitter every time we update a new page. I do have some advertisements on Project Wonderful on other people's webcomics, and that helps bring in some hits, which is always fantastic. I've tried other lesser successful, well, not really lesser successful, but lesser obvious ways, like in the book, Patrick runs his business through basically like Craigslist, so I've like put up punch up ads on Craigslist to sort of like mirror and hopefully bring in people who maybe not familiar with webcomics as a whole. And I'm also a big fan of, like Todd was saying, promoting other people's webcomics on your webcomic, and they in return will help promote yours. I have a list on the side of Punch Up for different links to different webcomics, and I have a few friends who run webcomics who have mine on theirs, and it's a good way of trading readers. Also, podcasting is really big. I have a few friends who do podcasts and comic podcasts who've given me shout outs, and that's a really fun way to get your name out there.
I think I come from a background in marketing. I've been doing it for a dozen years now. And there's very traditional things that, kind of like how do you categorize the things you can do with marketing. Advertising is a pretty general thing. You could say social media at this point is a pretty general type of marketing. And public relations, personal appearances, such as public events, such as conventions would fall under that kind of category. And I think it takes a combination of all these different things. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. I think it's okay to put your eggs in one basket for a short period of time and then switch over to something else and kind of cycle through things like that, because that way it feels like you're always doing something fresh. But I think specifically, if we're talking about webcomics, it's important to not just promote online, but to get out there and press the flesh and really, put your face to what you're doing. Because there's just that emotional response people have to actually meeting you and seeing the stuff in real life that's just way better than they can see on the internet, because really, the internet is saturated with content. There's so many webcomics period out there that it's really hard to stand out. But if you can do something different to really shine in front of them, even if that's just talking to them, having a conversation about your comic or whatever they want to talk about, that makes a really huge difference. I think what you guys were talking about with Facebook and how you created a band page for the band in York, that's very clever. And I think you can take things like in your comic and bring them out into the real world so that they feel like, oh, you're part of this kind of secret game almost. Like with my comic, Lackluster World, one part of the story, there are literally these T-shirts that say, "Where were you the day you died?" It's a big kind of plot point to the story. And I actually made these T-shirts that say, "Where were you the day you died?" And it's kind of this meta thing where you are almost like a character in the comic. One of the most successful marketing things I ever did was I wrote an article about marketing comics on Newsarama. And I did that for 10 weeks, and it was a finite thing. I wrote them all ahead of time, and they ran them for me. But in the time I did that, there were several convention appearances I had done, and at every one of them, people came up to my table very early in the morning and told me how much they loved the articles, and then every one of them bought something from my table too. And all it took was just, spending a couple, maybe it was a lot of time, maybe it was a couple weeks, writing up 10 articles and getting them out there. Social media is fantastic because, it essentially can be reviews. It can be your PR. That 140 character tweet in itself was I read this book and it was awesome, and then shares it with their friends, and that is a little mini review in itself. And I think that's a really easy on-the-go way to market yourself. You can do that on the bus, you can do it anywhere from your phone. And then my last point about marketing is recognize opportunities that will somehow make you stand out because there's so many people making comics. So I'm going to make one now and say, anybody wants a free copy of Lackluster World #1 after this can come to my table and come get one.
Yeah, speaking of marketing, we brought our own mini books to hand out. So do you guys have any questions or any comments, anything you want to specifically talk about?
I'm very grateful for all the advice about marketing and stuff, but in a way I was hoping that this is more about why does anybody need webcomics and how are they different than the printed books? Because all what I hear is you're basically marketing your printed books. If you ever make any money, it's because you have printed books on the side that you sell. But how is the webcomic different? How does it do anything that the book cannot do? And why would I want to see that instead of the book?
Sure. Well, lots of people are getting to the point where they're getting all their media on computers and on digitally now. And that's just the way the world's turning now. One of the best benefits of having it online versus a book is the feedback you can get from your fans and the people who are actually reading it. I mean, that's probably my favorite aspect of doing it on the web, is getting comments and emails and whatnot concerning the work itself.
I wasn't asking about your benefit. I was asking about my benefit as a reader. Why do I want the webcomic and not the book?
You can read it for free.
Okay.
It's free entertainment.
But what it meant so far for me, I mean, I've been looking for comics that I like on the web. I hardly ever see anything I like, because first of all, the pages are usually cluttered with ads, with words that don't belong to the comic. I search for 5 minutes to find even the comic book, and I don't, so I go. And somehow it just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't catch on, because a lot of people are also using this forum, as you say, like, basically you're skipping the editor. The editor would say what you said before, like you repeat the same joke and people really hate it. Well, that's what an editor would usually say to you. It would say, don't make a whole book full of this joke because it sucks. So on the web, you do exactly that, and you have all that feedback that tells you that that's not a good thing. But why would I want that? How can I find the good ones and really want to read those?
Well, I think in a lot of ways it comes down to, and just like any finding a printed comic that you like, it comes down to a lot of it's your taste, whether or not you're interested in the story that's being told, whether you are, and if the format's not something that appeals to you in general, because some people, for example, just don't like reading things on a computer screen. Just as a very generalized statement, and if they don't like it, then they're not going. Unfortunately, that's something that we can really directly market to. What we try to do is provide, we're going to try to provide an entertainment on a consistent basis that you can go to and get on a regular basis. You can get it on your phone, you can get it on a tablet, you can get it on a laptop, you can get it on your computer, you can get it on your television, and we make it so it's accessible in so many different ways that you don't have to go down to your local comic book shop and plop down $3 and get it there. You have the ability to, from a friend's house, look it up if you want to. Or if you want to show somebody else, you don't have to bring a physical copy with you. You can just log onto a computer and pull it up on screen.
Well, that means important is that I get it everywhere and all the time and fast. But that's not what I'm, for example, looking in a comic. I tell you why I asked that question, because I would say almost 10 years ago, I saw somebody actually doing a webcomic that was something that you can never find in a print, because what he did is he used the different layers of the internet, like going down, going sideways, going upwards, for an actual creation of the story. That was so captivating, and unfortunately I never found that thing again, because I really wanted to, but I never found it again, and I never find anybody who does this. And you just wonder, why doesn't anybody get on that train of saying, this is what web is for? It's totally different than what you can get in a book, and that is why I'm doing it, not because I can sell my books.
There are some.
That's one tool, I know. But
You're talking about a new type of comics,
Exactly.
not
Well,
just
yeah,
a
it's-
different.
and that's
for the
what I
web.
thought this was about.
And,
About something new, and not about advertising what is told.
If I can speak without sounding like I'm trying to advertise to you, was my concern when I made spoilers. I sat down, I wanted to make a webcomic, and to me I took that task very seriously because, whatever I'm making, the form of it implies, or it informs what I'm doing. So if I was going to be a webcomic, I sat out and what are the qualities of the web that's different from a printed page. So spoilers is actually one long scroll, and all the chapters bleed into one another, and I calculated at a certain time, I was thinking if I wanted to make a print version of this, and the whole thing stretched out would be 100 yards or more, so that was kind of not really issue. And in terms of design, my day job is as a web designer, so that was also thinking about, you brought up, there's cluttered with ads and you can't even find the comics. So for me, that was another concern where I need to, right now, all that's on the website for spoilers is just the comic, the title, and then there's links to if you want to jump to the next chapter. And for me, that was very serious in terms of design because, as I was saying earlier, I wasn't that interested or passionate about marketing this or having comments about it. It's a work on its own, and I wanted to present it in the way I felt was true. So, and I'm not the only one. I think it's just with webcomics, there's such a huge expanse in catering to all different tastes that, I think the vast majority, they might not necessarily be ones you respond to, but there's an analog to that in the world of print literature. I mean, there's so many books produced every year, and you might not be interested in reading about 99% of them, but there is literature being made that really speaks to you. And it's unfortunate with the web, since it's all usually people sort of promoting it on their own. There's not publishing houses to push the ones that are, say, critically acclaimed or the ones that speak to your particular interests. You do need to sort of find it out and pay attention to, who's a well-regarded webcomic artist, why are they, whose name have you heard, why are they, Kate Beaton was, a huge name that sort of broke out beyond the usual webcomic circles. And if you sort of latch onto that name you heard, you say, okay, she has discerning taste, what comics does she read, what does she champion, and there is a bit of digging involved. But I would argue against your point that there's nothing that you would respond to. It's just more difficult to unearth.
What I would follow up with is, when you really break down what a webcomic is, it's a piece of printed comic that it's basically equated to the web. So you have the version that is, you have some that, like ours is just a comic strip, much like you find in the Sunday papers or something like that. Other people do full pages. In the case of what he was just saying, in his case, full pages that continue on end to tell the entire story. There are different kinds out there, but by true definition of what a webcomic is, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a hybrid of something that already exists. In many ways, it's just a different way of presenting something that already is out there.
Well, I think webcomic is in the definition of it, is only a socially accepted definition.
Right, it is.
And what you're getting at is, you just said webcomics are essentially a print page on the web, which I may or may not disagree with. Because I think what you're saying is that the web enables all these opportunities for it to not just be a printed page on the web, because you can make it interactive. And I mean, today there's motion comics, which is kind of like low budget cartoons. It's almost like there's this level of passive entertainment versus active entertainment. And passive entertainment is you watch a cartoon and the content information spill into you. And then there's active entertainment where you have to actually flip the page or click the button or do whatever. And what you're talking about is extremely active entertainment, where you can actually click through it and almost choose your own adventure and go through and do lots of different things. And I think, I know comics on the internet enables the opportunity for that entire thing to be a spectrum, not just one or the other. And there's not a lot of what you're talking about, but it's out there. I've seen it before. And I think that the majority of people do the more passive content approach, the more print content approach, because that's what people are accustomed to. That's what the majority of people are looking to read. And sometimes doing something too interactive is a large shock to a lot of audiences. And it's kind of a risk to produce something like that. I think a lot of people are going to jump on board.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Shameless plug, but I do have 3 questions up front. My name is Ken. I'm with the Elyria Comic Book Initiative. We're a nonprofit that promotes literacy through comic books. If you have family-friendly content and would like to have your website, your book published off of our website, I'd be more than happy to do an artist every month to host your book and allow you any opportunity to market. It would be a great win for us and a great win for you. I would root for it out here. Thank you. 3 questions for you. As you sit down to make your comics now, how are you making them? Are you making the old-fashioned way? Are you using digital technology because it's going to go to the web? Do you have a particular outlet in mind when you're making them? Like the use of Comixology, I've been taking notes on my iPhone. I'm finding so many new things on Comixology, even Marvel and DC. I'll get all the free stuff and sample things I've never seen before. So do you have an end distribution means like that in mind? And then finally, when it comes to distribution, is there a particular number that you're looking for as far as a benchmark of success? You had mentioned worldwide viewing of a comic. Well, when you sit down, are you trying to say, well, I need 100 reads, or I need 1,000 reads, 10,000? Give us an idea of what a goal for distribution is.
Start with that, Sarah.
I wish I had those written out in front of me.
I'll give it again. When you sit down to make your comic book, are you doing it the old-fashioned way? Are you using some type of specialized equipment? What is an outcome as far as where do you want to have? Are you building it for a particular distribution, like a Comixology type of app? And then distribution-wise, what is a goal for you for distribution?
Okay, in terms of making the actual comics, I usually start old-fashioned. I start with a piece of paper, and depending on what the comic is, a pen and ink, watercolor, whatever I want to do. Then from there, it goes into the computer, and sometimes it gets colored, sometimes it doesn't, and basically gets put into one of a couple forms. I like to do PDF versions that people can read on tablets, can read on the computer. I do a print version, that I sell at conventions and on my website. And then I do a version that will just be on the website, that you can read parts of the book or the whole book, depending on which book it is, for free. In terms of distribution goals, it changes as the more people that you get interested in your work, the more you want it to be distributed out there, I guess. So maybe your goal 1 year is to get 100 people to read something. Maybe the next year it's 1,000 people. So it changes basically. So I think I got everything. Can I?
Yeah, that's good. I'd like
I
to hear
just
from the panel.
always, sorry. I just always want more. My goals are to have more than I did the day before. I check my Google Analytics constantly out of some obsessive compulsive thing, and
Which is recommended against.
Yes.
Because you'll get discouraged.
Exactly. But I'm happy as long as I have more this day than I did the day before. So I don't have like a set number I go for.
The creation of the pages, Doug will provide the script, a rough draft of the script. I'm a traditionalist, so I'll just do my thumbnails on scraps of paper. I get comic book boards, pencil it, ink it. I do an ink wash. I'm not a big... I work on a computer all day at work, so I try to stay away from the computer as much as possible when I'm working on the comic. So I'll just do the ink wash, scan it in. I use the computer for the lettering. I do some effects. If it's something I'm trying to get that I'm not going to be able to achieve with the ink wash, I use Photoshop, and that's how we create it.
We try to keep it very organic. Like he mentioned, the script is just a rough draft. The script is always a rough draft. We'll have like 3/4 of a page done, and then might make a change on the final panel. I mean, it's constantly an evolving process.
As for means of distribution, we're researching comicsology. We haven't decided exactly whether we're going to do that yet, but that is a possibility. We do create PDFs. We haven't set up a shopping cart to be able to sell those yet. We have CBR formats, CBZs. So those are available. We use the CBRs, CBZs, and the PDFs as contest prizes. We'll post it on Facebook. If you repost a blurb about our comic, we'll send you a link. You can get a free download of the CBZ of the first issue. So, we're looking into comicsology.
So yeah, I guess taking them in order. I'd like to do as little on the computer as possible, so I try and do as much traditionally. But even then, when I scan it in, there's a lot of cleaning up, and for Project Ballad, it's in color, so I do all the color digitally, and so I do that. As far as distribution, it's just the website and the archives, and I mentioned we want to maybe do digital distribution, like little mobile device ready packets of story. But I have a friend who's had a really successful digital-only comic that I sort of take all my ideas from hers, and she seemed to be able to do it well, and it was really successful. And I guess finally, borrowing Doug's answer, just like more readers all the time. And really the ideal is to be able to sort of have a relationship with these people. I want to like know who they are more than seeing just like a huge number. That's really like so important to me, to like meet people who actually read the stuff. So I just add that, but same answer.
Because of the fact that I going through the process of the writing, at least, because that's all I can really directly speak to. Ryan lives up in Michigan, I live in Indiana, so we don't have the ability to meet face to face on a very frequent basis. It just doesn't happen. So a lot of times I will produce scripts as they come to me. As soon as I come up with something, doesn't matter if I'm at work, I'll stop, I'll just real quick write something down, get to it later, send him an email, and we'll have constant communication refining the script, and then he'll take the script and transform it into the art. And sometimes as I'm writing, especially if I'm writing like a longer story arc that might take 4, 5, 6 strips to do, you'll find me going back and forth through sections several times before I get to the final draft. I do almost everything on the computer. I use Notepad. I don't even use Word for some reason, just always prefer Notepad.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's just the easiest thing to pull up and work with.
Well, you don't have to worry about formatting.
Exactly. Word will say, oh, you meant to do this, and next thing you know, your whole thing's screwed up, and you don't know why. So, but I do all my work. And as far as distribution goes, our means for distribution, obviously primarily online. We do offer our entire first year in a printed form. We have a mini comic that includes one of our stories that we've done online in a printed form, and we have one standalone comic book that we've done that's completely separate from the site. As far as what goals for distribution are, I have to really agree with what he was saying. Is ideally you want to have a fan base that you can relate to and understand what they're looking for, so you can start providing what it is they want the most. If someone, not say you can completely change what you're doing to only reflect because it becomes fan fiction at that point, but you can at least try to relate more to, if someone wants to get, it goes back to the feedback thing I was saying earlier. And you always want to have a larger amount of people reading so you can get better feedback, more feedback, because that way if you have just one guy who's on your site, he can be trolling you. If you got 45 people and then one guy's trolling you, you can see one guy is trolling you. So that always helps.
Yeah, as far as to continue that, I'd rather have like a handful of readers than like 100 hits, because someone can go to your site and not like it, but if they come back, that's where the real success lies for me, is getting people to actually like it and follow it for more than just one strip. You get more time to have them invest in your stories that you're trying to tell, rather than just having one strip flop. As far as how I make the comics, I started off just drawing them by hand and then scanning them in to color and letter. Now I actually do them all digital. I use a Wacom tablet, so I can just draw them right into Photoshop. It saves a lot of time. And I've been fairly successful getting a similar style. That was what was hard at first, was trying to match what I could do on paper, and I wanted to make sure that it could be similar before I went fully digital. But eventually I got that working, and I can do that. And I test the site a lot on like my phone and various computers, because our goal is really just distribution through our website. So I make sure that it loads in all the different browsers and different mobile browsers, and just make sure that it works there first before we focus on trying to branch out anywhere else. We want to make sure that the main thing we're doing is quality.
And then I'll speak one more thing as well, going back to the seeing that constant recurring readers thing. It was mentioned earlier that Todd mentioned, where you're checking analytics every day and constantly looking for more, and how that can be a discouraging factor. Often what we try to do when we're looking for, we try to constantly look for a trend line. You always want to see growth over a period of time, and day to day can be very misleading, because as Ryan said, you might produce one comic that someone retweeted, a bunch of people read, and then never came back again. So it can be misleading looking from that perspective.
One time, Scott McCloud, my friend sent Scott McCloud a link to Spoilers, and he retweeted it on Twitter, and on that day there was like this massive spike, like thousands of people, and then it was like back to like 100
Right.
Punch Up is a collaborative effort. I write it, and my artist, David Brame, lives in Toronto, so there's not often a lot of face-to-face like you guys. So there's a lot of G-chat and Skype, sessions talking about what's coming up and what we're going to be doing next. But as far as the jobs in the making of Punch Up, the script was written, or the first draft, the basic of a script was written for a while, again for an actual physical graphic novel. But as we were doing the webcomic, I would go back and give Dave 30 pages, script at a time, that were rewritten or adapted to better fit the web. Maybe there's a punchline moved to this page or that, so it kind conversations start and end on one page, so you get like a full reading session rather than having to necessarily wait until tomorrow to hear how a conversation ends. But basically, I write naughty words and then Dave draws pretty pictures around them. As far as I know, he works fully in paint and ink and paper. He goes into Photoshop for grays and halftone patterns and stuff like that, but the bulk of the work is physical on paper. Then he sends it back to me, I letter it, and I put it up on the web and take care of all the web duties. As far as distribution is concerned, the webcomic itself is how we're distributing it now. As far as like physical printings, that changes from day to day depending on what new media is coming out. Like Kickstarter is a big thing right now that we're seriously thinking about if it comes to having to self-publish it, or can't get it picked up through a publishing house. And I think a readership, like Kevin was saying, like you guys were saying, is more what we're looking for rather than a big hit. I think, like Kevin was saying with Scott McCloud, we had links to our site up on like Reddit for a little while, and there was like a massive like 600 hit spike, and then the next day it went back down, and that was always kind of looming over us, and I was always waiting for the 10 days to go by so that spike would be off my screen. I wouldn't have to see it, wouldn't have to think about it, just get back to normal.
And change the range a little bit.
But yeah, like I'd rather have more people coming back every day than bigger hits per day.
The three questions: production, distribution.
When you produce it, how do you do it? Are you making it for a particular type of distribution format, and what's a goal?
Production, I do almost everything by hand. I do like 95% by hand. Do all my tones with grayscale markers. A lot of people are surprised if they think it's Photoshop or ink washes. I have a book of original art out there if you want to see it. Thanks. Distribution, I don't have a webcomic, so I can't speak too much from personal experience, but I think when you're talking about webcomics, the distribution is just seeing it. So I think marketing and distribution are virtually the same thing. If you've got somebody to actually just get an impression of your comic, that is distribution. It's in their brain now. Would you say goal was the third question? My ultimate goal? I want to make this my full-time career. I have a day job and I'm just not there yet. It's been 7 years of progress doing the series I just completed, and I've got a plan. It's taken a lot longer than I expected, but ultimately I want to be able to actually make, I don't need to be rich, just enough to live off of.
Well, that's, I guess, the question then for everybody before we leave. You've got a print medium that you're working in. How many copies do you need to move a year to be in that area for you? Everybody's goal is a little bit different, but definitively between print versus online, where do you need to be from a distribution standpoint each year, print-wise? Where do you guys need to be on an average distribution-wise electronically for that type of scenario to take place?
Well, it's not quantifiable in number of books. There's this great article online you can look up called 1,000 True Fans, and it talks about how if you have 1,000 true fans who's supplying you with almost a constant income of merchandise, that's your base, and you really need to keep yourself moving forward. But really to try to quantify it in some way, it's not really a book amount, it's a dollar amount. How much money do you require to live? And you might need to bring in $100,000 worth of sales just to pay off the $70,000 in printing bills or whatever expenses you have, so you have 30 grand left to live off of. And just making the numbers work would be my ultimate goal.
Living off of the webcomic now, I don't think is a viable option just solely off the webcomic. And like Eric was saying, it's really not about books, it's just what you need to live, and I don't think that's possible just on the webcomic for me for right now. At some point when I have multiple books going, maybe that would be an option, but as of right now, at this moment, it's just not what it is.
Yeah, I don't see that happening in the near future at all. I only know of a few webcomics that they solely do webcomics, just because like advertising can bring in money, but I don't think it can bring in a full living unless you're getting a massive amount of hits that we're not anywhere near.
I'm sorry, I was just from curious standpoint, because I haven't done any form of advertising on my own work, but it seems like a lot of things, like you might make a couple of cents per hit. So if you're making up your materials and you cost a living, let's say you do want $30,000 a year and you're only making a couple of cents, so you would need like so many thousands of hits per month. Like, not saying whether or not it'd be like achievable. Like, I don't know anyone else who's surviving being a webcomic artist, but how many hits per month would it take for you based on the way you make comics? Like, do you have any idea, like, based on the way you get funding?
I don't know, because with Project Wonderful, it's bids. So on certain days when you get more hits, your ads actually sell for more.
Okay.
So it just depends on what the advertisers want to pay for that many hits.
Yeah, that 2-cent ad one day could be a 30-cent ad the next day, because people are bidding on it. They're bidding on your ad space.
Yeah, and it's not gonna be, there's no guarantee it'll be live for that whole day either. I mean, you could have people bidding on your ad, you can make up to, for example, 50 cents. It could be 50 cents a day, but then they might yank it off after 2 hours. So then you have nothing there, or a fallback to the next highest bidder. So even if you have somebody that's bidding 50 cents a day, there's no guarantee you're gonna end up making 50 cents for that day in that ad space.
It's very arbitrary to just put a number on it and say, if we had 10,000 hits a month, then we would be okay. I mean, there's too many variables involved, like how much people bid on ads and whatnot. I would say 10,000 is probably a good guesstimate number.
And then what about with prints? I'm actually a little bit more curious about prints. Like, is there a certain amount, like, if, I know you said like the 100,000 if you had 70,000 cost, but like, as someone who does prints, like, you know, how much of your, for what you sell for, what percentage of it is, you know, your materials, your time, your print? Like,
Yeah, well, first of all, regarding webs and ads, your question kind of suggested that it was only ads the only form of revenue you're going to have with a webcomic when you have merchandise sales and other things too.
Yeah.
In fact, I think even the biggest webcomics people who are making 6 figures couldn't rely on their ad sales alone.
Right. Yeah, I don't think,
Absolutely.
I don't know any webcomic artist who survives just on clicks. It's all about physical copies of the books, if they have prints, if they have
Convention
I wasn't
appearances.
trying to limit it. I wasn't trying to limit it to ads. I was just, we were getting a lot of, I think the question was like, what would it take? And we were getting a lot, well, I don't know if it's achievable. I'm like, well, what's the not achievable thing?
I think it's definitely achievable. I mean, there's about 35,000 webcomics that get published every single week. And roughly about 200 people out of 35,000 are making enough to live off of. And I'm of the belief, and this, I may be wrong, but I'm of the belief that the cream will rise to the top. And if you have a quality book, you're gonna get there.
Yeah.
You just have to work hard, pay your dues, that sort of thing.
And that's true, but I think more of the point is living solely off of the webcomic though, without providing any kind of physical media, without providing any kind of additional resources beyond just that would have
Yeah, most of them, yeah.
I think that's more to the point though. You still have to put that forward in other forms of purchasable content. Going back to the most popular webcomic, you know, if you become a popular webcomic artist, you're going to even be being paid for convention appearances.
Yep.
That's something else that's going to go on top of that. It's just getting your name out there and start perpetuating out, but you have to get to that point before that can happen. And the hardest thing is getting over the humps needed to get to that point where your name is out there in the industry. That's why it's so hard to put it. It's almost impossible to put a clear number, especially from the perspective most of us would be at, because the fact that we, you know, it's still quite a ways out there to see what it would take to get to that level.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time here. But we don't want to leave any of you hanging. We're all going to be out on the floor. Come by and ask us a million questions. As you can tell, comic creators love to talk. So hit us all up. us personally, we have some mini books here. Feel free to take one on your way out. I think some other people have some stuff too. But yeah, I want to thank you all for coming, and please talk to us out on the floor. We'll get into all these topics more in depth.
Thank you, everyone.